anymore. Not anymore with Silverlight. It's not anymore with Silverlight. There is no help system available.
I'm going to ask one final question and just have a quick fire response from the panelists. And now I want to open it up to see if you've got a couple of questions you'd like to ask. So my last question was, looking in your crystal ball, looking forward 5 years, how do you envisage software user assistance being different from today? Ankur.
5 years, I think it's going to be different. It's going to be very different from the way it is today. It's going to be again about helping the users into the right content. And we are going to see much more interactive and rich documentation, which could be in the form of videos, could be audio-video files, simulations, demos, things that are easy to communicate via picture, images, or videos perhaps would fit in that category. So not everything that exists in the form of text today may continue to be that way. I think it's going to be much more interactive, dynamic, things that are easy to consume, understand, easy to grasp, and can be easily changed. The way things are changing, we need to make sure that our systems are going to keep up with the pace, our content is going to keep up with the pace, and so it needs to be dynamic, interactive, rich, and collaborative. And I think that's what it's going to be.
All right, thanks. Martin.
I would broadly agree with that. I think it's going to be, web-based authoring is going to be very important. I think there's going to be a trend towards companies building e-learning and document communities. Also, a lot of focus on intelligent document frameworks to make sure you've organised your content properly, and also curation tools, which I've kind of mentioned already. So that's would be the summary for me.
Great, thanks. Mike, anything to add?
I just think the opportunity for delivering content is going to expand dramatically. All around us now, we're getting more and more devices that can share content. I just bought a new universal remote control for my home theater. It has a help system built into the screen on a $20 remote control. If you go to the bar in the hotel, the touch screen that the cashier uses has a help button. Everywhere we look now, the new DVD players have help menus. So the opportunity for delivering content is now everywhere. So it's going to be much easier to deliver content. People aren't going to have to chase content anymore. So the trick for us is now figuring out how we now deliver content beyond just the computer screen. So that's something that hopefully will make life easier for everybody.
Great. I'm going to open it up. Has anyone got questions? Anything doesn't necessarily have to relate to what we've been talking about? Yeah. If you just shout out and I'll repeat it to the panel.
We now heard that you said that you embrace the audience of assisting you in writing the help for your product. First, how would you do that? Because it's kind of basic knowledge to most of us in here that the help that you find in the tools are leaving it for something to ask for. You say that you want to embrace the forums to add up to the tough, difficult questions. But then again, that's the questions that we want to have. So it's not about the hen and the egg, but how would you embrace the help from the audience?
How exactly do you get the audience to submit that content we all said is a good thing to have? Yeah, Mike.
Now, I'll probably get yelled at by the other panelists here, but I would say too many companies are trying to adopt some of the Web 2.0 functionality, assuming that they'll now get the community to write their documentation. And in my opinion, that's the wrong way to approach it. The community should be used to augment and improve your documentation. It does not relieve the company of the responsibility of providing the initial documentation. I didn't mean to shut down the panel.
Yeah, by all means, anyone else on the panel?
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. And having these community sources is a great source of information you can use. And what I think we should all be looking at, and this is as yet still an unsolved problem, is how can we aggregate this with our own content? How can we merge and blend these things to provide access to all of this, perhaps through a single interface? I don't know, because there's always the risk, if there's this free community content that's available on Google, if you start integrating it in your own site, users may start thinking you're co-opting it. And that then they'll say, okay, that forum's no good anymore because it's now integrated in the vendor's site, so let's start up a new forum. There is that danger. That credibility it plays a huge role in all of this. Anything you do with the community, credibility is infinitely important.
Let's see if anyone else has a question they'd like to ask. This is your big opportunity. Look at these people, ready to answer your question. Yes?
Yeah, it strikes me that 5-year vision of UX, you still seem to be very much a help doc paradigm. Even taking into account error messages, which is my favorite area. But just like in the translation industry, are we facing a situation where we're looking to people outside the user systems community to drive real innovation? Or are we just going to be sitting here in 5 years saying the same old stuff?
And your first point was about, we're still talking about a separation of help and product and user interface, and you're suggesting maybe we should be viewing them as just a single entity.
Yeah, it's always very interesting to me when we talk about content management, we consider it a back-end function. Well, why isn't the back end the front end? Why are we talking about information, search and retrieval? You know, if you look how your Gmail is organized, who cares? You know, you don't even need folders, just throw it in there. You can get it back. So, I'd be interested to hear your views on that.
Anyone like to respond to that?
Well, I think the example of Gmail is excellent, because now you're getting, and this is simply evolving technologies that vendors like us have to respond to. And Gmail, you just have or iTunes works in the same way in the background. You have all your content in one big blob, and then you have different filters to access it in different ways. I've seen experimental help systems that work in the same way. That instead of having a TOC, you have a series of filters. And you can click on filters, and you get a smaller and smaller TOC until you finally end up at the topic you're looking at, that you're looking for. That's one way of doing it. There are many ways of doing it. And your point about the back end should be the front end is absolutely true. And I think one thing we're going to need is more and more frameworks that allow us as content developers to move away from all the problems, for example, of dealing with putting stuff on the web, by giving us an interface with which we know it's going to work on all browsers, or a closed system like the iPad, where we're only developing for one known browser. Something like that. That's great. A good example of this is a site called Squarespace. I don't know if any of you have heard of this. It's like WordPress on steroids. And it's both a hosting provider and a content management system. You get and it has templates that are so easily adjustable by the user that no two Squarespace sites look alike. You see a WordPress site, it always looks like a WordPress site. You see a Squarespace site, you don't know it's a Squarespace site. And I think that sort of thing. And nobody has to worry about web programming, nobody has to worry about browser compatibility. I think that sort of thing, that's the direction things are going for user assistance providers.
Just time, sorry, Dennis, yeah.
I just want to add a couple of things. They are related to your question about separation and somehow to your last question about what I see in the next 5 years. I suppose we see a closer integration of all parts of user assistance. Because, for example, for me, I'm first time on this conference, and it was I was slightly surprised that user assistance is just writing. User assistance starts from software design. It's a usability, it's a great design. For example, when I read guidelines for user interface design for iPhone applications, I was surprised that the Apple 4-bits help system within applications, and it seems to work. Most iPhone applications doesn't have help files. So in the next 5 years, I think we will see a synergy of all components of user assistance. Good design, good usability, good help documentation, good online trainings, good support, technical support, knowledge bases, user-driven, user-contributed support such as comments, forums, wikis, communities, and so I think it's a great trend for the future. And maybe, by the way, it's a place for this conference to grow, not only writers,
sure,
but support people, designers, and so on.
All right, well, I think that's a really good note to end on.
We should work together.
Yeah, no, I agree, yeah, absolutely. All right, I'd like to thank the panel very much for that session. Thank you. Okay, now we've just got to slightly rearrange the stage, and then we'll move straight on into Anne Gempel's next presentation on collaboration.